Hey, this is Scott. Hope things are going well. This is a video for section 1-1 of chapter 1, review of basic concepts. In this section, we'll take a look at the basic operations with whole numbers and decimals. This section is a bit of a long section. It starts on page 2 and finishes up with some exercises on page 29. So I'm just going to hit a few of the high points because it's really in many cases just a reminding you of some information. So once again, we are in section 1-1, which starts on page 2. Couple things I want to point out to you. First of all, on page 4, on there is a nice chart for the place values. And it has them all the way up on the left side of the decimal with whole numbers, and the right side of the decimal with the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, everything else like that. So I think that is a good one to keep as a reference if you need something like that. A good fact on page 5 too, just a reminder that zeros at the end of a decimal number do not change it. So those trailing zeros and decimals do not change the value of a decimal. And page 4, that was place values. So back to page 5, trailing double zero. So in other words, 0.5 is equal to 0.50. Half $1, 0.5 is the same as 50 cents or something like that. So a couple other things in here too. Rounding, it talks a little bit about rounding on page 6. And don't forget, when you round, if it's a 5 or greater, you round up. And if it's less than 5 or 4 or less, then you would round down. So you can keep those things in mind as far as rounding goes, and make sure you're looking and rounding it to the correct place too with all those things too. The next part kind of goes into some different pieces with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing whole numbers and decimals that way. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're adding or subtracting decimals, and this starts on page 9. When you're adding or subtracting decimals, make sure your decimal points line up. So you'd have them straight over the top of each other. So in other words, if I'm taking 1.8 minus 0.6, that gives me 1.2. But I got my decimal points lined up there with all that. So that's how something like that would work. Obviously, that would be true with addition too. It was 1.8 plus 0.6. That's going to give me 4. Carry 1, 2, 2.4. That decimal point comes right straight down. Just kind of keep those things in mind. You can use a calculator in this class, so it might not be something that you're going to use right away, but it will help you in making sure that an answer does sound reasonable with some of those things too. A couple other things, zero added to or subtracted to or anything gives you that same number back. 0 times anything is always 0. Another piece it talks about in here is going back and checking your problems. I always think it's beneficial to go back and check your work. As we mentioned in the initial video, when you're doing your daily assignments, the exercises to review the chapter, you can go back and work on those. So if you see a mistake, go back and check it, or if you got time, go back and check that with those things too. So make sure you're doing some of those things. Talks about multiplication, division. One thing you'll see in this book, they'll represent multiplication and division a couple different ways. You can see multiplication represented by an X or just a dot. Division can be represented by a few different pieces too. You could have a division sign, a fraction bar, something like that, because those are both division problems. Only a fraction is just a division problem that hasn't been finished yet. So that's kind of how some of these pieces go here. It kind of takes you through division, long division, everything else like that. If you have any questions on that, if the examples that they have don't make sense, please give me a holler with all those things, and we can lead you through some of those things. Talks about how to average something again on page 25. So that's another handy piece with those things too. So as I mentioned before, when we get to, in this case, like page 26, where the assignment is, these are things that you can do just so you feel comfortable. These will not be graded. but it starts on page 26 with question 1 and goes through page 29 with a question 111. I'm thinking. Oh, I take that back. Page 30 through question 125. So I mean, these are the problems you can do. Once again, they aren't going to be graded, but if you want to go through some of those to say, hey, Cal, oh yeah, I got the hang of this. Ooh, that doesn't make sense. If you got any questions on that, all the answers are in the back of the book, so you can go through and take a look at those. And if something doesn't make sense to you, throw me an email, give me a holler, whatever the case may be with some of those things too. So anyway, that's section 1.1. Some of the review of the basic operations. Have a great day. Bye.